Hello, my name is Emily Traster, and I am here today with Dan Dalton, one of the founding partners of Dalton and Tomich. Dan has helped a number of churches leave the United Methodist denomination and keep their property. How are you doing today, Dan?
I am doing great, Emily. It's so good to see you. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you. So, Dan, can you give us an update as to the state of the United Methodist Church and what you are seeing with conferences now that 2022 is drawing to a close?
Well, it's been an interesting year in 2022. We've seen two major moves out of the denomination. One occurred in the June annual conference season, where there was the first wave of churches that used 2553 to leave. And then the second wave was this past fall in 2022, where another wave of churches have left. So you have probably, anywhere between 500 and 700 churches or so that are on their way out or should be on their way out by the end of 2022. Just kind of like surveying things across the country in conferences, what I'm seeing is that there probably will be another 1,000 churches or so that will leave in 2023. There's just not a great rush to the door. And here's why. There's about 31,000 United Methodist churches in the United States. About 80% of those churches are 50 people or less who attend. The bulk of those churches, the smaller churches, the pastors are at a couple point charge. They're ready to retire. They don't want to deal with this whole issue. Their congregation doesn't really have leaders. They don't want to deal with the issue. So they're just going to stay. And really that's the bulk of churches, that they're just going to stay and do nothing. Then you have the larger churches, the healthy churches. Those are the churches that are probably either have left or going to leave in 2023. So what we've seen is pretty much in every conference, the largest churches have left, whether they're conservative or progressive. Those churches are on their way out because they've found they really don't need a denomination. They don't need a connection because that connection has failed them in the United Methodist Church, and everything that the connection was supposed to provide them, they can get on their own. They can get their own pensions and healthcare. They can get their own Sunday school materials. They can hire their own pastors. So the larger churches, the healthier churches, really don't need a denomination and really don't want to be part of a dying denomination like the United Methodist Church, nor do they want to be part of any denomination. They're happy where they're at. So what's left that we'll see in 2023, I think, is the middle. In the middle, I would define as churches between 200 and 1,000, where they have little or no debt. They have large buildings where their congregation average age is probably in the mid to late 50s, not a lot of young families. They might have a preschool, but that probably serves the community as opposed to members going there. There's probably not many members in their post-college to 40s, mid 50s. Are probably very limited on those members as well. Very few children or youth as well in those ministries. And those are the churches that are like looking down the road and seeing like, boy, we got a problem here because our congregation's aging. We're not bringing new people in, and being part of the United Methodist Church is not a draw and is actually hurting us in evangelism and getting people in to this church. So I see a lot of movement there, and I think that's where it's going to happen because a lot of those churches have been just kind of waiting, and they want to see what the cost is going to be to disaffiliate. They want to see how other churches have fared once they disaffiliate, and I think that they're kind of looking from that perspective. And my guess would be the next probably 8 months will be very telling in terms of the number of churches leaving. There's no guarantee that there will be conferences in the fall of 2023. So I would say, if you're thinking of leaving, you really need to get this thing done by your annual conference in June of 2023. And so, from that perspective, I'd say, again, maybe another 1,000 churches will go. Some of them will go independent. Some will go to another denomination. Some will go to the Global Methodist Church. It's really just, I think it's every church needs to make a determination as to where they think their future lies the best in the future, best for them, I should say, in the future. From a conference perspective, what we're seeing is that they're relatively pleased. They can get up and crow and say, hey, look, only 2%, 3%, 5% of our churches have left. And look, look how great we are, the message, for example, that we're hearing over and over and over again is no denomination's perfect. Everyone you're going to have a problem with. We'll figure this out, together. Just don't leave. And I think, they're counting on that. And I think a lot of churches will fall into that trap. So we will see that happening, I think, as well. And I think conferences are happy about that. What they're not seeing is that the attenders are going to go. So right now, there's a claim of about 6 million attenders are members in the United States. That's usually what if you look at data, for example, it has attenders and members. The attenders are generally about a fourth or fifth of the membership. So if there's 6 million people who claim to be members, probably about 1.5 million or 2 are actually attending. From all the churches that are leaving, which are generally the larger churches, that probably brings your number down to about 1 million people, maybe somewhere underneath of that, who will be attending in the future. So you're gonna have a lot of smaller churches with less people moving forward. And I think the conferences are seeing that. So, budget cuts are coming forward. Apportionments will go up. You'll see agencies go away for the most part. You'll see affiliations go away as well, just because they won't be able to afford it. Not that they won't want to do it, but they won't be able to afford it. You'll see anything non-related to the core function of the church probably leave. So campgrounds, contributions to seminaries, any other real property that's owned will be probably limited as well in the future. So the conferences are going to see a shrinkage in terms of people who actually come to church, which means a shrinkage in the amount of tithing and donations. They're not going to see a huge volume number of churches leave. On the other side, annual conferences are going to see a lot of the larger churches leave. They're going to see a lot of interest from the middle churches think about leaving, that's kind of what's going to be at play in 2023. One last thing is that I think that the target or the goalpost for conferences continue to move. So we've seen conferences start with, for example, 50% of the fair market value plus pension plus mineral rights plus apportionments plus everything else you can think of, and that was primarily based out of fear, I believe. Fear that everybody would leave the denomination, and because they're not seeing a rush to the door, you're seeing conferences generally relax the requirements. So everything that was required at first, through their disaffiliation process, will probably change. Not in every conference. There's some conferences where they're going to increase, they're going to tighten it to make sure that you can't leave the requirements. But I would say in the majority of conferences, you're going to see something closer to the language of 2553, which is apportionments and the exit fee, which they call a pension number. So I think that's what I'm seeing in the future. As of today, what we're seeing is just a generalized number of churches leaving, larger, healthier churches on their own, smaller churches, a little of those. The middling churches, I think, is where the play is going to be in 2023, and I think that's what's going to happen. After 2023, though, it's going to turn into litigation, and when churches realize that what they've been told by their bishops and conferences and district superintendents, that things won't change and our articles of religion won't change, for example, that's the big mantra right now. When those changes, they're going to say, yep, that's true, we did say that, but it changed. And that's where we're going to see the lawsuits happening at that point in time. So that's just my interpretation of what's happening in the world today. And we'll see what happens in December 2023, if it actually came through or not.
As always, thank you for your insight, Dan. If your church is interested in speaking with Dan, please reach out to our office at 313-859-6000 or email us today. Thank you.